Boulanger. Let's talk. So, first time us being live in quite some time, but I wanted to jump in here, man. Too much to say in a recording, too much editing. So, I wanted to jump in here and talk to you guys about the Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl hopes. And, I haven't looked at any of the betting uh, markers or anything like that. I just want to address it just here, right here on the GM, right? And that's in concert with the Isaiah Likely injury. And I do think that the Isaiah Likely injury absolutely has an impact on our Super Bowl potential. Does it decrease it? I think so, right? And I understand that we do have a sentiment here in Ravens Nation that as long as we have Lamar, we have a chance. And I do agree with that. And I do know that nationally, Lamar Jackson has been believed to have the best collection of talent that he's ever had in his career. And I also agree with that. But the truth is, you can't lose too much talent before you have to go back to carrying and dragging the offense once again. And so I think that this Isaiah Likely injury is a big deal, right? And I believe that most of Ravens Nation believe it's a big deal. So let's not dance around it. Let's just get right to it. Isaiah Likely, I really hate this for the player and the person. Let's talk about the person first, right? We don't really hear much about Isaiah Likely in the news other than his performances, his talent, his readiness, his camaraderie. That's all we really hear about. A good dude. So when we think about a person who is in the height of his career, he's a budding star, could be a potential superstar at the tight end position. All of those things are the player components of your talent, right? But when you think about a person who just has put his head down, coming in as a fourth round pick, and every time he's been called on, he's performed. When Mark Andrews was out with whatever the situation may have been, whether it was injury, whether it was the car accident, whenever he had to fill in, he was ready, willing, available, and capable. And so when you think about a guy who has not demanded the ball, although his potential, his talent demands that, he hasn't made any noise. He hasn't put a demand on the Baltimore Ravens to make him the primary focus at the tight end position. He has just been willing to do the Batman Robin thing at the tight end position and continue to showcase his talent. Last year, I believe he had 42 catches for like 470 yards and multiple big play touchdowns, timely catches as him and Lamar Jackson has developed some camaraderie. And so you hate it for the person, right? Because anytime you have an injury, it does have a mental wellness component to it, right? Especially in his NFL career where he has not had any injuries. This is a first, right? And not only is it an injury, but then you have to have surgery to repair that injury. And so my hope is that the man, right, who I believe to be a good dude, a good character guy, I think he has everything he needs to get back to full health. But then when you think about the player context is a twofold thing where you have to consider the business of the league. And we understand that Isaiah Likely is in his fourth year, translation, a contract year. And this could not have happened at a worse time. Getting a injury to your lower extremities where you have to have surgery, you're going to be out for a minimum of 6 weeks, I believe. And that puts a halt on all negotiations. Now, we all have heard that maybe he and the Ravens were close to a deal, and then you heard other reports that a deal wasn't even close. Well, what we can be assured of right now is that there is no negotiation. Therefore, there is no deal being close because he cannot negotiate while injured. I don't believe that the Baltimore Ravens would negotiate while he's injured because you don't know what that's going to look like when he is able to get back on the field and just begin to practice or work out. Let's go work out and then practice. And so there's a huge question mark with contract, with what's next for him. And so my hope, man, for the person and the player is that surgery goes well. There's nothing else found as far as injury once they open him up and start looking inside for the repair. And it's just a tough situation, man, all the way around for Isaiah, for the Ravens, for the potential to get to a Super Bowl. How much of the potential does it decrease for the Super Bowl? I'm not sure, but we'll talk about our hopes here shortly. But Isaiah Likely, man, it's a bad deal for this kid who is just balled out every time he's been given the opportunity. And when his contemporaries at the same position have been continuing to get paid, this is a devastating situation. You know, you just saw Ferguson get paid out in Dallas. You saw McBride get paid out of Arizona. You've seen other players before him get paid, the George Kittles, the Mark Andrews, so on and so forth, over the last 3 to 4 seasons. And so he was next man up, basically. And unfortunately, this had to happen. When I'm thinking about Isaiah Likely specifically, I do want to make this a point. Let me be very, very clear. I do not see Isaiah Likely returning to the field earlier than the bye week. I believe the earliest we're going to see Isaiah Likely in 2025 is week 8 after the bye week. If I have the schedule correct, the bye week is week 7. And then, of course, we return to the field in week 8. I think that's the earliest. When you look at Isaiah Likely's timeline, he's out for 6 weeks. Well, that's 6 weeks post surgery. I don't believe surgery has happened yet. Maybe it happens today, maybe it happens tomorrow. But either way, that's all of August. When you look at the qualifications or the metrics for injured reserve, that's a minimum of 4 weeks. And then you can designate that player ready to return. Well, I think that once you get into the 4 weeks of a season, we're now going into October. That's going into week 5, then week 6. I don't see a benefit of bringing him back in those weeks. No week 5, no week 6. I just don't think that there's a benefit. And so I think that you could allow him to reintegrate himself during the bye week plus the week of preparation for week 8, and then see what he looks like when the Baltimore Ravens return to the field. I think this is the case only because we saw what it looked like in 2023-24 when Mark Andrews had been out. He wasn't 100% when he came back, and he looked like a compromised version of himself. And so I don't want Isaiah Likely to be in that kind of situation. I don't want Lamar Jackson in the offense to be in that kind of situation where you're trying to reintegrate a player in the middle of your first 6 games. So I think it's beneficial. I think it's what's going to happen. In fact, that we won't see Isaiah Likely until week 8. I guess you could kind of look at that like a free agent signing or like a big trade in the middle of a season, getting that type of talent to return. But I just don't see him being his full self until the 2026 season because it's 2 recoveries. It's the recovery from the injury, and then it's the recovery from the surgery. And I know in context of timeline, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but let me explain. If Isaiah Likely just had a broken ankle, you could cast that up, That's one healing from the fracture, right? But if you have surgery, you are healing from the fracture, but you also have to heal from the invasiveness of a surgery. So it's two levels of healing. And so I don't think he was going to be 100% himself this season. And so it really makes me sad for him to know that he's going to miss at least, I believe, the first 6 games of the season. I think that he's going to have some ramp up time and some ramp up time during games. And so, what is he going to be? I think it has greater implications, which we will discuss in a separate conversation on Saturday morning. But Isaiah Likely, shout out to you, brother. Hope you get well soon. And I hope you are able to return to every bit of who you were prior to this injury and more. And so when we think about it, we now have to think about next man up. And the easy answer is Mark Andrews, next man up. But I don't think it's Mark Andrews. I don't think Mark Andrews is the next man up because Mark Andrews was literally the man beside of Isaiah Likely or vice versa. This has been a pairing of Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely for a couple of seasons, and they've looked mismatched at times, right? For the 2023-2024 season, you know, one of them was at their best when the other was absent, and vice versa, right? And it was really hard to see both of them on the field at the same time, both able to be productive. We did see some great steps and great strides in the 2024 season with Likely and Andrews on the field at the same time. But now we're back to Mark Andrews. So I do not think Mark Andrews is next man up. I think he's just the man who is up because he was already in kind of the lead position at the tight end spot. He has been balling this offseason. You've seen him and Lamar revitalize that connection. He is definitely focused. And I think that this is going to serve him well. It's going to serve Mark Andrews well that he doesn't have to hear the noise of allow Isaiah Likely to take the lead. Because for the first 6 weeks or more, he's going to be the number one guy at that tight end position. I think he still has a lot of game. This is one of the first off seasons, barring anything that happens between now and week 1. This is one of the first off seasons in 2 seasons where he's just able to train and prep for the season versus rehab. And so I don't think that there is going to be a learning curve, of course. I don't think that there's going to have to be any missteps in his role because I think that he knows it well. He's performed it well. And everything we see this offseason, Mark Andrews has been what we knew him to be, a top end tight end. And I think even with all of the new talent coming in at the tight end position, even with all the new money flooding into the tight end position, I still think Mark Andrews qualifies when healthy as a top 7 tight end. Where I would put him specifically, I don't know, but I do think he's a top 7 guy. And at one point, you had Isaiah Likely surging to draw even with him. But I think this is going to be certainly a setback and a step back for Likely. And so I think Mark Andrews has an opportunity, man, to kind of reestablish his credibility in Baltimore. I think there'll be nothing better for Mark Andrews than to come back, start the season healthy, and ball, right? I think that it does allow us an opportunity to trust him again as a fan base. I think it does allow us as a fan base to root for Mark Andrews once again. And in truth, we're going to need him. We're going to need him to be every bit of Mark Andrews from a couple of seasons ago when fully healthy, because the first 6 weeks of this season, well, heck, actually, the entire season is going to be a grind. When you look at our schedule, one of the toughest in the league, every week seems like there's a heavyweight hitter. And even the teams that are rebuilding or reestablishing or retooling, whatever you want to call it for that specific team, they're going to bring a tough mentality to the table. Even when you look at the Browns, the Patriots, the Jets, some of those teams like that, they're going to bring some toughness to the table. And so I think it means a lot that Mark Andrews is able to get back in and show his Pro Bowl level self. Will he have a Pro Bowl season with Isaiah likely missing? I think he could. I absolutely think that Mark Andrews could have a Pro Bowl season because he's not going to have to share those reps. He's going to get the top target at the tight end position. And when you look at all of the top guys, tight end wise, in the AFC, you are looking at a guy like Brock Bowers. You're looking at maybe Travis Kelce. You're looking at a guy like Kincaid up in Buffalo, who is, up and coming. You're looking at a guy like Njoku out in Cleveland. Thinking about the rest of the league. The guy that the Pittsburgh Steelers just picked up, I think that's Jonnu Smith. But I still think Mark Andrews is going to be at the top of those guys, maybe right behind the Las Vegas Raiders, Brock Bowers. And so I think this could be a season where Mark Andrews has a resurgence in his career, and he has the potential to earn him a bag of money, because whether the Ravens pay him or not, somebody is going to pay him, because I think that this will be an elite level season for him, especially when he believes he has something to prove. The Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl hopes. I think the Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl hopes took a hit, as I mentioned a little earlier. And I think they took a hit on the premise of the tight end room being fully stocked, the wide receiver room being stocked, maybe not with the elite of names at the wide receiver position, but stocked. The running back room stocked. The offensive line returning 4 of the 5 starters from last season, and everybody being fully healthy. But I think what we've seen this season, off season specifically, since training camp has actually started, is that there is a level of vulnerability that every team has to deal with. But we've seen it specifically in some early early preseason nicks and dings. We saw in day number 1, Zay Flowers go down with a lower body injury, but he did come back pretty quickly in that same practice. Later on in that practice, we saw DeAndre Hopkins go down. But he has returned to practice. In that same week, I think Jair Alexander missed a practice. Rashad Bateman was sick. I think Chidobe Awuzie has missed some practices. And so although we have gloried in the depth of the Baltimore Ravens, I think that we can still see that just with a few things going haywire, especially when it comes to injuries, we absolutely could have some trouble. And the Isaiah Likely injury is the first injury of notoriety, the first injury of significance. And he's out for 6 weeks. I believe he won't be back till week 8. And so that does put a strain on the rest of the depth, from the tight end position to the wide receiver position, so on and so forth. It does put a strain. because Isaiah Likely is a player that can't really be replicated. And so you really just need somebody to step up and step in to do some of the heavy lifting, to take some of that pressure off of Mark Andrews, take some of that pressure off of Lamar Jackson. And so we'll see. But I do think the Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl hopes did take a decline. I still push us to, and this is just me doing my own metric, I still give us a 75% chance of getting to the big dance and winning it all. Where I was around 90% with the depth, with the not just depth, but the level of talent at the position groups, I was somewhere around 90%. That's why I was going through the AFC divisions, and we'll continue that narrative probably tomorrow into next week, of course. But I think that this is a huge loss, and I think it knocks us down to about 75%. And what would stabilize, the confidence is seeing who steps up in Isaiah Likely's absence. And so I still think we are favorable. I think our hopes should still be high, but I do think that they did take a hit with the Isaiah Likely injury. And so I think that the step up, the next man up, which I said wasn't Mark Andrews, I think that's between Charlie Kolar and Devontae Walker. I think these are the two guys who have an opportunity to show who they are and what they can do on a big scale. You see, at the position group, Charlie Kolar has definitely shown a lot of potential. He's shown the speed. Now, I'm not saying he's fast, but he's shown the speed to get down the field. He's shown the hands to make the plays. He's shown an ability to block. He's shown an ability to get behind the quarterback and do some dive plays or tush push variation, whatever you want to call it. So he's definitely a talented dude. But I think even beyond Charlie Kolar now having an opportunity to get some shine as the number two, I think he does have a real opportunity to earn a bag. You see, because if Andrews no longer splits that number one rotation with Isaiah Likely, Andrews is number one. Now, Kolar moves from 3 to number 2. And I think that gives him an opportunity to put his full skill set on display on more of a regular basis. And so I think Charlie Kolar does have an opportunity to cash in. I don't think he'll be in those big numbers of the 14, 15, $16 million like some of your high-end names, but I do think he has an opportunity to push his money up to $7, $8 million with a good season. And so I expect that from Charlie Kolar. I expect him to come out and put all of his abilities on full display. The other guy that I said I believe had an opportunity to kind of prove himself, to step up, be the next man up, is Devontae Walker. Now this kid hasn't done a whole lot of his NFL career. When he did get one shot, he caught a touchdown off one pass. And we haven't heard much from him since that time until this offseason. I did declare and proclaim that Tez Walker would be one of the greater beneficiaries from the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. And then once training camp started, that became clear. You've heard about his speed, you've heard about his playmaking, and you've heard about what is believed to be improved hands. And I think that he is a true, I guess, opportunist. I think he has to be. And this was happening before Isaiah Likely went down with injury. And so I don't see a reason why Tez Walker would step off. I think he's going to hit the gas and take opportunity. And so why Tez Walker versus another player? Well, I think Tez Walker offers something in that wide receiver room that nobody else has. He has a twofold toolkit, right? He has some size at 6'1". He has long arms, and he has a 212 frame. So he has size, but he also has that elite speed that he's proven to be a true deep threat. And so when you put all of that in display or on display, where Isaiah Likely would be making some of those splash plays, I think this opens the door for a Tez Walker to step into some of those vacancies that would have been previously occupied by Isaiah Likely. And I believe this kid is going to make a big difference. In fact, I think he does have an opportunity to threaten DeAndre Hopkins for that third spot, barring any kind of setback, barring any kind of injury, mishap, things of that nature. I think it has an opportunity. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about coming into the season for Tez Walker. He's displaced DeAndre Hopkins. I'm talking about as the season unfolds, as he gets more comfortable, as he and Lamar Jackson develops a level of chemistry. I think that he does have an opportunity because I think his skill set will demand it. And we also have to add into the unfortunate factor of injury. You know, we understand that Bate has an injury history, Hopkins has an injury history. And so I think that that's going to make opportunity as well. And so, man, excited about Charlie Kolar and Tez Walker getting an opportunity, but definitely sad for Isaiah Likely and what has happened in the early part of training camp. So, man, let me know what you guys think about the Isaiah Likely injury. Have I made it more than what it needs to be made? Am I overthinking it? Or is this injury as detrimental to the Baltimore Ravens as I believe it to be? And who do you think is the benefactor of the Isaiah Likely injury? Is it Kolar? Is it Tez Walker? Or is it someone else? So listen, I'm your guy Boulanger. This is the GM.